Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard Gaming. Today I'm going to take you on a short trip through a few rumored or cancelled home game systems, one from Konami and two from Taito that you maybe didn't know about. Now if you're super into retro gaming YouTube, you may have come across these already in one way or another, so I'm not uncovering some huge secret or anything. I'm not claiming to, I'm just going to share some info and talk about them for a few minutes and discuss what could have been. Sources will be linked in the video description as usual. Having said that, let's get on with it. The Konami something. We begin our little journey today with Konami, probably the best third-party developer of the 8-bit era and one of the top 3 of the 16-bit era. Konami was known for bringing out awesome home titles back in the ancient old days with the bits of 8, classics like Contra, Castlevania, Gradius, Life Force, Track and Field 2, Metal Gear, various sequels, and more, all on the NES, and they elevated that platform. Konami's work was similarly great on the MSX computer. In the 16-bit era, they continued their winning streak with sequels to a lot of those games I mentioned, along with some fresh originals. We saw more games that will become classics like various Castlevanias, Contras, Axelay, Rocket Knight Adventures, and so many more. Now you might think it's weird that Konami never planned to strike out on their own with a home game system. If you think that,
well, you're wrong!
Why are you wrong? Because Konami did think about releasing their own game system. How do we know this isn't some made-up internet garbage? Easy. Check out this link to a Time Extension article from a few years back, which itself references the book Untold History of Japanese Game Developers and a specific interview with 2 Konami developers from the era within it. In said interview, Konami programmer Yoshitaka Murayama told the book's author John... I won't murder your last name, John. It's up on the screen. Anyway, Murayama told John S. that he was moved to the software development group working on games for the new console Konami was working on in 1994. What would the system have been like? That's where things get interesting. It was going to be a premium handheld system with polygonal 3D graphics that also used cartridges for its games. I wish I had an image of a prototype or at least a rough sketch of the system or something, but unfortunately, Mr. Murayama stated that all the designs are lost. However, I used my incredible imagination and artistic skills to create this mock-up in that industry-standard software, MS Paint. Here's a fun note. I'm a tech and art teacher and I teach Adobe apps like Photoshop and Illustrator, but you don't want to see anything realistic, right? Enjoy the crappiness of this terrible but mystifying masterpiece. And look, it's even playing Konami the game. How about that? Anyway, back to reality. Why didn't Konami follow through and release this system? It's not entirely clear, but Mr. Murayama stated they stopped development once Konami got wind of the design of the Sony PlayStation, and then they moved their development teams off the portable hardware and onto PlayStation. While neither of the developers interviewed were involved with the design of this handheld system, Mr. Kukino did speculate that perhaps it was the high costs of manufacturing and distribution that gave Konami cold feet. He also stated that the PlayStation was higher spec for its 3D processing. I find that reason in particular to be a bit odd since the portable system wouldn't have really been competing with the home Sony PlayStation at that point. I think if anything, a portable system like that would have seen a boost in popularity if some PlayStation games could have been ported to it. Even if the quality would have been reduced, it would have been an awesome complement to the PlayStation, I think, if anything. Now, I for one would love to have seen this system back then, and I'm sure I would have bought it if it had reached us in 1995 or 96. Versions of the Game Boy were still dominant at that time, so Konami could have really owned the handheld business if they came out with a quality product with major games on it. But then again, you never know. Nintendo might have upped their game way sooner if Konami's system posed a real threat to their business. Nintendo has utterly dominated handheld gaming since 1989 and the release of the original Game Boy, dispatching all competition to their systems no matter how technologically superior they were. So they would not have just rested on their laurels and let someone take it away from them. Oh well, it would have been cool and maybe we would have seen some of Konami's stuff that ended up on the PlayStation on this unnamed Konami system instead. And you might think, well, that was it. Konami never released any home game systems. But if you think that,
well, you're wrong!
Look at that, I got to pull the captain out twice this week. Anyway, what Konami system made it to the market then? It's the TurboGrafx 16 Mini or PC Engine Mini. These are technically Konami consoles, since Konami had purchased Hudson 15 years before their release. So there. The Taito Wow Wow and others. Next up is the first of 2 Taito systems we'll discuss today. Well, really kind of the first of 3, but you'll see what I mean as we go along. So this first system, in this blurry picture from the Tokyo Toy Show in 1992, was a prototype of the Taito Wow Wow at what is likely its only public showing. Why the unfortunate name? Wow Wow is a satellite station in Japan that's still around today. The Taito Wow Wow wasn't going to be your run-of-the-mill standalone console. No siree, it was going to have its games distributed over the satellite channel connection and would have also had a built-in CD-ROM. Taito was poised to essentially beat Nintendo to both satellite and CD-ROM technology in the home market. Nintendo didn't launch the Satellaview until April of '95 in Japan and canceled all of the proposed CD-ROM add-ons for the Super Famicom. Taito had a partnership with Japanese firm ASCII and JSB, the company that owned Wow Wow, for this project. According to interviews, the Taito Wow Wow was going to be based on existing Taito arcade hardware. Considering the timing, most people seem to agree it would have been based on the Taito F3 arcade board. That was a decently powerful arcade board for the time, and it ran games like Growl, Liquid Kid's Final Blow, and more. Here's a look at the specs of the Taito F3 arcade board. And keep in mind, the Wow Wow wouldn't have been identical, just initially based on this. Now I have been, and will continue, to show you Taito F3 games in this segment to get a rough idea of what games for the Wow Wow would have potentially looked like. Now, website Unseen64, which had been in an archive state but seems to no longer be live, did an interview with Yukiharu Sambe, who was the R&D manager of the project. He mentioned that the system wouldn't have had much memory and he viewed it as ideal for older games and said they had a version of the original Darius up and running on it. If we look at this article from French magazine Consoles Plus, we can see the picture of the Wow Wow along with a photograph of a menu showing characters from older, simpler games, which definitely supports what Mr. Sambe had said in that much later interview. He also said he modified the arcade hardware, and I think we would have seen the capabilities of the F2 reduced to make it more affordable because of that. Much like Sega had used the System 16 as sort of a starting point for the Genesis/Mega Drive, but also modified it, making the home system different in many ways. So it's even possible that the Wow Wow might have been running on hardware based on an older arcade board than the F2, considering what Mr. Sambe had said about the games that were planned for it. The Taito Wow Wow was pretty far along, hence its appearance in 1992, so what happened to it? According once more to Mr. Sambe, the biggest culprits were, as they often are with these things, money and technology. On the money front, Taito determined that in the end, building the satellite receiver functionality into the game system would have made the unit much too expensive for the average consumer. On the technology front, he also stated that slow speeds and data transfer errors resulted in a lot of issues with actually downloading games over the satellite connection. And so the Wow Wow was unceremoniously killed off. Or was it? Here's the thing, some corners of the internet say that this system, the Taito X55 karaoke system, aka the Taito DataNet system, was just a repurposed Wow Wow and used the same technology as that machine. However, as I said before, most of the available resources state the Wow Wow was based on the Taito F2 hardware, which used a 16-bit Motorola 68000 CPU at a speed of 12 MHz. The X55 uses a 32-bit Motorola 68020 CPU. That's the CPU that was used in the later and more powerful Taito F3 arcade system, which we will come back to in just a minute. Now, based on Mr. Sambe's interview, it is impossible to believe the Wow Wow would have had the much more expensive 32-bit 68020 as its CPU in 1992. 68020 chips in bulk orders cost about 6 to 10 times what a 68000 did at the time. According to multiple sources, 68000 CPUs went for as low as $5 in 1992 in bulk orders, while the 68020 was roughly $40 to $50 per chip in bulk orders at the exact same time. In 1995, however, the 68020 was only about $15 in bulk orders, so it makes sense that the Wow Wow would have used the 68000 in 92, while the X55 used the 68020 in late 95. Sorry if the tech and pricing talk made your eyes glaze over, we're done with all that. So let's talk about the Taito X55 for a moment. Even though it wasn't a game system, a few games could be downloaded over a phone line and then played on the system. The most interesting thing about it, and not in a good way, is that you didn't just download a game and then own it and have the ability to play it whenever you wanted. Nope, it worked almost like an arcade, where it would cost roughly the equivalent of $2 to play a game one time after you downloaded it. This was charged to phone bills in Japan. Want to play again after getting a game over in your title of choice? You'd get billed for another play session, just like inserting a few more quarters. Now, the X55 reached out to the phone company whenever you started a game to tell them to add that session to your phone bill. And there were 12 known games released for the system, at least as of 1996, but the service remained live in Japan all the way until 2009 in some form. The X55 actually had the first version of puzzle game Cleopatra Fortune, which was released into the arcades afterwards on, you guessed it, the Taito F3 hardware. And that brings us to the last potential system I want to discuss today that was rumored. And I'm going to be completely upfront with you on this one. It's a lot dicier and less concrete than any of the other ones we've discussed here today. According to some magazines of the era, Taito was working on a home version of the Taito F3. Before we get to the home version, let's look at the rumors section here of an old issue of EGM from October of 1994. Now this listed rumor basically only paints the F3 as the arcade system that it was, and a lot of the games listed are correct, even though some names were modified, like Darius 3 becoming Darius Gaiden. The F3 was also known as the Cyber Core when it landed in the US, by the way, and it did use interchangeable cartridges like the Neo Geo arcade hardware. Now sure, I'm old, but not to the point of senility just yet, which I mention because I remember another gaming magazine back in the day showing a picture of an 8-button joystick in a small blurb article about Taito bringing out a home version of the F3. But I spent days and a whole lot of hours scouring old issues of EGM and GameFan thinking it was in one of those, but I was not able to find it. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn this over to you guys, since I know some of you are big gamers that are about as old as me. Do any of you remember this article that I'm talking about? It's possible it might have been from a different magazine. I read a lot of them in those days. Occasionally I'd read stuff like Next Generation, Game Pro, Game Players, format-specific Nintendo and Sega stuff. I also read a fair amount of UK magazines like CV&G and other platform-specific ones, as family members used to bring them home when they went on trips to Scotland. So it could have even been in one of those. If any of you can fill this gap in for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. Anywho, let's talk about the games of the Taito F3 that we would have seen on any home version of the system had it ever developed into a real product. The F3 had some pretty awesome games on it, like Darius Gaiden, Ray Force, aka Galactic Attack, aka Gunlock, aka Layer Section. Each this game had a lot of names. Bubble Symphony, fan favorite Elevator Action returns, Arkanoid returns, Space Invaders 95, Puzzle Bobble, aka Bust-A-Move 2, 2X, 3, and 4. Twin Cobra 2, and many more. There were over 30 games on the platform if you include canceled ones like Twin Kicks here. Now the good news is that many of those games ended up on 32-bit systems and PCs of the era. Several of them were ported to the Saturn in particular, and the Saturn versions of most of the ports it got are pretty indistinguishable from the arcade versions. I might show you a few mini comparisons of some of them in a future video. In the end, we had pretty close to perfect versions of these games anyway, so I'd say things worked out alright. Now, where did the rumors about a potential home version of the F3 come from? I think they were based on two things. First, the replaceable cartridges for the arcade hardware might have made magazines think that Taito were going the Neo Geo route, even if Taito never actually said anything to that effect directly. Second, these magazines may have gotten wind of the X55 system and didn't know that it was going to be a karaoke machine. They may have thought it was going to be a dedicated game platform. So I think it's either one or both of those factors that led to rumors of an F3-based home system. Anyway, your turn. Tell me, folks, did you know about these systems? Have you seen coverage of them in magazines of the day or the good old internet here in the last few years? Do any of you remember the article I was talking about that I couldn't find with the Taito home system and the 8-button joystick picture? Tell me about it in the comments. That'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it online somewhere. That's the only way my little channel here can grow. If you want to support the work that I do here, you can do that on Patreon, Ko-fi, or right here on YouTube through super thanks and channel memberships. What do I use the money for? I use it to buy things to review on the channel. With that, I'll say thanks for watching and see me later.